Welcome to our little mini-sode. It's just me and Don this week. We're all alone. It's actually, Michael left us unattended in our little recording studio.
He left us with his soundboard.
Yeah, we have a pink timer, which I was going into this, I was kind of feel like, it gives me kind of like 80s commercial vibes. Don and I are on our rugs with our big analog phones.
And drinking high C.
Yeah, the big curly updo ponytail thing. It's time for some kind of girl talk, chub talk.
That's right.
I'm excited.
Our mini-sode is going to be Chubs on Chasers.
Yes.
So we talk a lot about chubby guys from the Chasers perspective. We haven't always talked so much about the Chasers from the Chub perspective.
No, we have not.
So I'm very much looking forward to some of your observations, Trevor.
Yes.
I mean, so are there through lines? Like, is there a personality trait or something that you see as being common, or like what do you expect from a chaser? What are your prejudices, your expectations?
I expect that, I mean, I don't think there is like a uniformly chaser personality type, but I think the like through line is there is usually like this kind of like not shut down, but like withholding, like holding back, like personality wise, like they don't want to put themselves out there entirely. They don't want to commit to the interaction. Is that what you mean? No, I think it's just this like nervous energy of like subdued, like people would maybe be in the presence of a celebrity because they're afraid of like gushing too much or something.
Oh, that's interesting. Because I have noticed that, but I didn't understand the thinking about it that much or the reasoning behind it until we started the podcast. Like until you have that context, it doesn't seem that flattering.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing to sort of keep in your mind when you start mingling with chasers socially. And it's funny because like, on a date, I think I could understand that a little bit more, but even just social interactions at parties or stuff, I've seen them really clam up. It's very interesting.
Yes. Have you ever noticed so like a social setting, it's like party or something, you're leaving and you do like the hug goodbye. And there's that little, like, I don't even know how to describe it. They like, with the hug.
Oh God. Yes. Oh shit. Oh, I didn't know anyone else noticed that.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a very slight melting of the body into the hug, and usually a slight wander of the hand accompanies it, very slight.
Yes.
But never, it's for this interaction, it's never kind of crass, but it's always like a little too long on the back, sliding down a little bit towards the butt or yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
I actually had, so I go to the chiropractor and there was a period of time where I was doing acupuncture as well. This was pre-COVID. They are resuming acupuncture, but I have not done it since it's resumed. And my acupuncturist had this very weird vibe, and his energy was kind of like, it's like, are we going to fuck? Because I think he's just used to being so intimate with people. And then his hugs were weird like that, where it was kind of like, it was the kind of chaser hug where it's like, it's just, this is weird. There's the kind of like back rub and kind of like lingering hand.
Yeah.
But then I was like, is this and I was describing it to Dan and he was kind of like, oh, maybe you're just like reading into it or something. And then Dan interacted with him and had the same thing of like, what the fuck was that? And like, he did the same thing, kind of the weird, this like a linger hug, which I think it's just like I think he's just a very mellow and good with intimacy where he can just kind of connect with people like that. And to where people are not used to that level of engagement. That
slight departure from normalcy can really stand out.
Yes.
I met this guy who, again, it was the same experience as you, where I was like, what is something weird happening here? But then I found out he did it to everybody. His handshake, like there was something very sort of like super gentle about the handshake. And when he shook your hand, he took your elbow in his other hand too. Right. It would be like that.
Yeah, I'm like, ooh.
Yeah, and it felt so weirdly intimate that I had the same sort of stumble. So interactions with chasers.
Yes.
Right. So whenever I have these conversations with Dan, he's always telling me like, oh, that's just true of everyone, right? That's not a chub chaser thing. I'm not sure about that. There are certain patterns in the chub chaser courting relationship that I'm wondering, I think may be unique. Have you noticed any of them? I have one in mind I'm thinking of.
I'm curious to what you have to say, because I do think it's true. Like what Dan says is true to a point, but I also think there are just things that are so specific to chub chaser stuff. So I'm curious to what you are about to present.
The one that I've noticed a lot is for early meetings, right? I've dated as a thinner guy. I've dated as a big guy. Never a thin guy. But I noticed when I wandered towards the more like average end of the spectrum, I had a way lower frequency of making plans with somebody and then them flaking out or just ghosting. Right. I see that a lot from chasers.
When you were at this more, towards the average spectrum, where were you living?
I was living in the exact same place as I am now.
Okay. Just because I've noticed personally, being from Chicago, the flakiness in Los Angeles and just the difficulty of making plans in Los Angeles is so unique to here.
Okay.
And like Chicago's pretty good. New York is like, you can make plans like 3 weeks in advance at a specific time and people will keep it.
Yes.
People have stuff going on. Whereas LA people, they're waiting for something better to come along.
Okay. That makes more sense because like when I was living in New York, I never ran into as much flakiness as I have out here. Okay. That's good to know.
And I find that true of any kind of plan in Los Angeles. It is a pain in the ass to make a time, like pick a day, pick a time, and have something set up as concrete in advance. It's always the closest you can usually get is like, okay, well, we'll talk on Tuesday.
And that's what happens to me. And then I'll reach out on Tuesday and then I won't hear from them. And then so this past week, I was actually supposed to get together with somebody on a Monday or Tuesday. Text them on Monday, nothing. Text them on Thursday, nothing. And then they text me back on the weekend, ignoring those earlier texts as though like there was nothing planned and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, you've already burned your chance. We're done now. I'm sorry. I have self-respect. Or maybe I'm just fussy. I don't know.
No, I think it is. I think also because, I don't know, because you're not a native Angelino.
That's true.
And I have far less patience for the whole like, oh, don't hate me. I had a thing. I think we have some Angelino listeners who heavily relate to this. And then I think we also have a large number of listeners who have no idea what we're talking about. But this, I think they can understand especially if you've traveled, the different kind of like personalities of cities and the energy of how things work. Like, so I notice in New York, it's easier to get people just to meet up out because people are used to meeting up out because New York has smaller apartments. People have roommates. Yeah. It's a whole thing. Whereas like in LA, I find the guys usually just want to like come straight home or just, can we just meet at your place? Because LA is all about private space.
That's true. Yeah.
Like parties in LA, like people don't really like, oh, let's all go somewhere. People are like, oh, we'll go to so-and-so's house. Holidays, there's not really like 4th of July. There's not a lot of like big events. It's always parties at people's houses.
Yeah. Like you see parties happening at parks, but they seem to be the minority of stuff. It's usually backyard barbecues and stuff in LA.
Yes.
That's very true.
I think that's why there's not as many like chub nights and stuff at bars. I mean, once again, COVID, but like even before that, like New York, I mean, there, I think is a far more active bar scene with bear stuff and chub stuff.
I also feel though, like, and this is definitely a New York versus Los Angeles thing. New Yorkers tend to be much more apparent in their thoughts, right? It's like, where you stand with a New Yorker. With Los Angelinos, they can be sweet as pie up until you say goodbye and then you'll never see them again.
Yes.
With a New Yorker, like when we split up and go our separate ways, I know where we stand and that's nice. I like that. That's a happy thing, even if it's a negative, like, no, this is our one date. That's great. I'm not going to be sweating about it long term.
And well, I've even I don't know, had that within like Chub Chaser stuff in LA. Like there was a chaser I met up. It was not a match. But I was like, you know, I think actually you would be a good fit for my friend. Cause like they wanted this, it was this chaser who really wanted me to be like, I don't know, they had this whole like daddy thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is not me. I'm like, you're really nice. Like, let's keep hanging out. But like, it's like, go to bigger city, look at this person. Like, I think it would be a match. And it was this weird thing where I don't know. Haven't been on that end. I've been rejected, but I've never had someone like reject me and be like, but you should consider this person.
That would be a first for me too.
But I don't know. I think LA, once again, it's this thing of you want to like make sure you leave your options open. You reject someone, but you don't want to kind of sever that. Whereas I think New York, like I'm walking here. I got to keep going. I gotta go get my bagels and my thin floppy pizza and get on the F train.
Well, it's interesting because like with the flakitude in LA, like there's something that happens with it where I feel like for me, it solidifies my opinion of the other person. Right. And there are times where I wonder like, so I'm cutting someone off after they've stood me up. Maybe I'm rushing to that conclusion. Do you think, or should I give them a second chance, or am I just abasing myself?
I mean, I think in this case, it's almost embracing the, Angelino that you now are, and just leave the option open. Especially just because, I mean, as we've talked about on the podcast many, many times, chasers just need more time to be able to get there. And they eventually do. I mean, it could be, a week, a month, it could be 10 more years.
That's fair.
But, at some point, bigger city Mars or bigger Vegas Mars 2025. No, that's realistic. 2057. You'll see them at the event and they might be ready then.
So I'm very curious what the trait was you were thinking about.
It was, I mean, that was just kind of the holding their cards kind of close to their chest, the kind of restrained because you're in the presence, because they are in the presence of just like awe-inspiring beauty and the object of their desire.
It's really interesting because I have noticed that, and listening to Dan and Michael talk about it on the podcast was very eye-opening for me. That's not something I ever put myself into their shoes for, but I have to admit, I find it a little frustrating that like their attraction to me is making them freeze up and treat me in a way that people who are not attracted to me treat me.
Well, I think because I feel like I was talking with, I think it was maybe Michael. I don't know who it was. Somewhat recently, the level of excitement and the level of attraction is such a different. It's like a different frequency that once you understand that, and once you can really get a grasp on like, okay, this is such a different experience for them, I think you get more empathy and kind of sympathy, and you can really understand why they are the way they are and not making that wrong.
Well, we had a lot to talk about, and that's actually going to spill over into our second episode of Trevor and Don Part 2.